Shavua Tov, everybody. I should say Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you on the other side of Shavua Tov. I want to give a warm welcome to our new cantorial intern, Joseph Flaxman. We call him Joe, because we like Joe. I'm with Joe. So everybody give Joe a warm welcome to Stephen Wise, his home for at least this year. From Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, which is right next door, the old Jewish Institute of Religion, made by Stephen Wise. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagofen borei peri hagofen. Everyone, yalai la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim borei minei besamim. Yalai la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meborei ha'esh borei meborei ha'esh. Yalai la 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 yalai la 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 yalai la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavir ben kodesh lechol hamavir ben kodesh lechol. Amavdil ben kodesh lechol, chatotenu imchol, zarenu vechosbenu, yarbe kechol v'chakochavim, balayla shavuato, 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 shavuato. Shavuato, 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 Shavuato. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase. Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu במהרה בימינו יבוא אלינו עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד, אליהו הנביא, אליהו הרשמי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי, מרים הנביאה, עוז וזמרה בידה, מרים תרקוד איתנו להגדיל זמרת עולם, מרים תרקוד איתנו לתקן את העולם, במהרה בימינו היא תביאנו אל מי הישועה, אל מי הישועה, אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, everyone, and we've got people streaming us online too. So here's what we're going to do. Each of us will give a few minutes of just getting into the High Holy Day spirit. You guys can sit down. It'll take me about 10 minutes or so. I was given the task of talking about anything I want connected to the High Holy Days. So I really love this shofar that I got, and you'll notice it's especially prepared for this year. Now, I do want you to know that, the mask is made in China, but the advice to put the Chinese mask on the shofar is Israeli epidemiologists who, for some reason, were the only doctors in the world who really cared about how to blow a shofar safely. It didn't come out of China, it didn't come out of Romania, but it did come out of Israel. And they said, you know what, if you want to blow shofar, we were playing around with this for months, actually, in our preparation. As you see, we have screens, and we will have congregants who will blow with us, not tonight, but on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. But, for 2 months, we assumed that we wouldn't blow shofar at all inside the sanctuary and we won't have wind instruments this time around, and all the singers will be behind plexiglass screens, including the choir, who will sit over there, and they'll have specially designed Broadway masks that they'll be singing through. So no aerosols are going to get through to anyone. I mean, we've kind of hermetically sealed this as best we can, but we kind of assumed all along that we would not blow shofar because it's like a wind instrument. But lo and behold, sometime in late summer, this report from Israeli scientists say, no, like it's if you put a mask over your mouth, it's the same thing. If you put a mask over the shofar, you can blow it. Now, tonight at the end of the Selcihot service, and also during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I'll also blow it into the ark. So if there was any doubt in your mind, and people who are listening online, I want you to know we took this thing very seriously, and we're going to do it as safely as we possibly can. Now, just a couple of thoughts about the shofar. First of all, the personal command is not to blow the shofar. It is lishmoa kol shofar, as the blessing is, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lishmoa kol shofar, to hear the sound of shofar. So that's the obligation on, with respect to the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. It's to hear the sound of the shofar. So I don't know if anyone has been in this group or listening online on the receiving end of me calling. I've been calling all week people who I know are not going to be coming to services, and I do it every year. And I have them, I say, stick the phone near your ear. I'm going to blow the shofar for you through the phone, because you haven't fulfilled the command of hearing the shofar unless you heard the shofar. So that's the commandment, and that's why, despite it all, we will have our congregants participating virtually on the screens, but also I'll blow it through there, and Cantor Singer also will do it, and he'll put his Chinese mask on Israeli advice, and that's how it'll go. Now, Rosh Hashanah is next Friday night and Saturday and Sunday. We will have second-day services. Traditionally, and the Orthodox still follow this, they do not blow shofar on Shabbat. If we were upstairs in the library, and if I wanted you to yell out, then I would ask you, does anybody know why? Now, looking around, I do know that some people know why, but I'll just tell you that the command is not actually a Torah command. It's a rabbinic command that was added, lest if you were allowed to blow the shofar on Shabbat, it's the same rationale for playing an instrument on Shabbat. We know that instruments were played in the temple on festivals, but rabbinic law instituted a prohibition on blowing the shofar as well as playing instruments. And the key rationale is that they said, if you are allowed to blow the shofar, you might forget that you're not allowed to carry the shofar. And in the case of an instrument, you might forget that if a string breaks on the violin, you're not allowed to repair it. And therefore, we're just simply going to prohibit this rabbinically from doing it. And to this day, therefore, if you go to any Orthodox synagogue in the world, they will not blow shofar on Shabbat morning. They'll do it on the second day, on Sunday, but we are going to do it, when it falls on Shabbat, we do it on Shabbat. Now, there's a verse in the Psalms that goes like this: Ashrei ha'am yada'ei tru'ah, which means something like, happy is the people that knows the sound of the shofar. And the rabbis use that to interpret in the Midrash. They ask, the Psalm says, happy is the nation that knows the sound of the shofar. And they ask, don't other nations blow the trumpet? I mean, this was not only an Israelite custom in antiquity. Lots of cultures blew the ram's horn or some kind of horn or trumpet. So the rabbis ask, well, why? What does it mean? Happy is the nation who knows the sound of the shofar. Lots of nations know the sound of the shofar. They ask, no. So they answer, here's the meaning. The meaning is that the Jewish nation knows how to convince their Creator to cause God to change the judgment on us through the shofar blast. Only the Israelite nation, only the Jewish nation knows how to blow the shofar in such a way so as to appeal to God to alter the decree that God might have bestowed on us during the year. Now, when you think about it, that actually is a profound thought. Because, I mean, I don't know, and Reva, I know you know almost everything, so you'll tell me afterwards whether this is true or not. I don't know. I don't know any other nation, actually, that ritualistically, or any other religion that through ritual blows the shofar. I mean, many nations sounded the ram's horn. Many nations sounded the trumpet. I suppose you can say that, wind instruments, trumpets are used in liturgical settings. But is there another nation, at least from the rabbinic perspective, what they were saying is the Jewish nation is the only nation that through the sounding of the shofar appeals to God to change the decree. In other words, we're the only nation that uses the shofar as a form of prayer. And that's really profound. Now, if that happens to be true, that's even more profound. But from the rabbinic perspective, that's what they assumed. And I don't know of any other, civilization that uses the blast of the trumpet in effect as a prayer without words. That's what the blowing of the shofar is, a prayer without words. So why blow the shofar? I would ask you to tell me, but I know that you know all the answers, so I'll refresh your memory for those who don't know. I'll give you a couple of suggestions for you to think about over the High Holy Days. First of all, among the most prominent explanations is from Rambam, Maimonides, who considers it to be a sound of awakening. And he calls out to the Jews, "Awaken, you slumberers." So the sound of the shofar is supposed to jolt us into not wakefulness. We need to be alert. Why? Because Rosh Hashanah is the day that the book of judgment, the book of life, is open, and it will be sealed on Yom Kippur. So we can't sleep through this trial. We need to use this time to try to appeal for God's sense of justice on us. In that respect, one of the names of Rosh Hashanah is Yom Hadin, Judgment Day. The choreography, part of the choreography of the High Holy Days is a trial. The gates of judgment are open, and much of our liturgy, if you pay attention to the liturgy this year, you'll notice that much of it is about appealing to the judge of all the earth, to issue justice to us. And when we sound the sound of the shofar, promotes not only a sense of urgency, but also a sense of vulnerability and fear. We stand before the judge of all the earth and appeal to God's sense of justice, and I would say mercy as well. Now, there are three sounds of the shofar. The tekiyah is the unbroken sound. And that sound, according to the tradition, is intended to remind us of the sovereignty of God. What's called one of the elements of the Rosh Hashanah service, Malchuyot, the sovereignty of God. And so we do know in antiquity that part of the coronation ceremony of ancient civilizations was to sound the trumpet. And so when we sound the shofar, in particular the unbroken sound, it's the sound of coronation. It's the sound of high respect, that God is the sovereign. When we do the shavarim, that's the three broken sounds, da-da, da-da, da-da. That's, as you can imagine, supposed to remind us of the brokenness of life. And all of us in one way or another are broken. We have all sinned. We are all fragile. We're all vulnerable before the judge of all the earth. And then the truah, nine at least, promotes a sense of fear, even panic, because we're on trial. And in that respect, also, many commentators point to the three-pronged choreography of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy: Malchuyot, Zichronot, Shofarot, sovereignty, remembrance, and the sounding of the shofar. Finally, I would add one comment that I really like, also from the Midrash, that points out that by blowing the shofar, the people of Israel ask God to move from the seat of judgment, because in some way, since all of us can never stand before the judge of all the earth and come out positively before God, the judge. And since all of us have sinned, we ask God, through the sound of the shofar, through all of these themes that I mentioned, to move from the seat of justice, which we can't win on that basis, we can't win that trial, to the seat of rachamim, to the seat of mercy. So I want to wish all of us a Shana Tova. We deserve it. We deserve a good year this year. And I pass this over to one of my colleagues, I think Cantor Singer. Yes.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi. Hello? My microphone was turned off. Okay, I'm back, everyone. Surprise. Thank you, Rabbi, for talking about the shofar, because I'm gonna set, it's a perfect segue into what I'm gonna talk about, because wind instruments are complicated in this day of COVID. Wind instruments and singing. All of you have masks or in here in the room, and those of you at home, you are liberated and you can sing in your homes at the top of your lungs, and I hope you are. I'm watching you. I'm paying attention to who's singing and who's not singing at home, so make sure you sing loudly. But here in the sanctuary, we are not encouraging people to sing, unfortunately, but we will have a choir, a quartet, that's singing behind the plexiglass that is over there, the glass, and they will also have masks as well, singing masks. And we have the band as well that are in mass, and but we don't have wind playing. Because the wind, unlike the shofar, flutes and other instruments, saxophones, clarinets, they have holes. And in this kind of a space, this kind of a small enclosed space, it would be very complicated to include it. So instead of welcoming last year's guests, who, by popular demand, everyone wanted them to come back. The moment that they came here, they said, "You have to bring them back." And everybody was up on the top of their seats, dancing around the room, going crazy. And I'm trying to recapture a little bit of that this year. We did book them to be here, the Afro-Semitic Experience. Truly incredible people, which is led by David Shevon. And they always like to make sure that I pronounce his name correctly. They take bets as to who is going to mispronounce his name. But I always get it right. Anyway, so David Shevon is the head of this group, and Afro-Semitic Experience. So I want to give you a taste of that this year. We have some selections that I'm going to sing. And one of them, we're going to start with the most familiar, which you're all going to want to sing along with at home. It's called Avinu Malkeinu, our parent, our king, our ruler, our queen. So we're going to play that now. We're going to play Avinu Malkeinu by Afro-Semitic Experience. So they're going to be here on the screens. You're going to be experiencing some of this also throughout the high holidays with our soloists and our band and choir singing, because that's one of the hallmarks of our congregation, is singing along, congregants bringing them up onto the bima, and that's one of the things we're going to try to do for the first time here at Stephen Wise. We're going to be welcoming guests up onto the bima virtually. So please welcome Afro-Semitic Experience, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu Vaneinu, Ki ein baru ma'asi. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed ve'oshienu. Aseh imanu בחסד, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו בנינו. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו בנינו, כי אין בנו מעשי. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו וחוננו. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, חוננו וחוננו. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד, עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו.
Oh, yeah. Feels good to sing with a band like that. It feels really good. This next song, just giving you a little taste of it, there's a lot more that we can share with you if we had more time. And we are going to be sharing more of these videos with you that they made. They made actually several more videos, and I hope that you share them online. Everybody online, please share these videos that we're going to share with you from Afro-Semitic Experience. There are two selections that we would have included, but the program just would have been too long. But there are, the song that I want to draw your attention to is called My Feet Began to Pray. It's a new song from Afro-Semitic Experience it's all new. It's on their website too. Go to afrosemiticexperience.com and go visit them and bring them to your shul if you ever have a chance. All my colleagues out there who are watching, please, you can welcome them virtually also, as we have. This quote from My Feet Began to Pray, it's a juxtaposition of two quotes. One is an African proverb quoted by Representative John Lewis. When you pray, move your feet. And that's the quote from John Lewis. It's an African proverb. And the other quote is from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, which is, when I marched in Selma, my feet were praying. So they find this common language between these two cultures, and they do this beautiful rendition called My Feet Began to Pray. And there's another one, I'll tell you about it a little bit later. But I'm going to segue right now into Davidson, this Ashamnu. It's a beautiful Ashamnu that I want to tell you a little bit about the Yashanu. It's an alphabet of woe. We have alphabets of praise, like the Ashrei, which is happy. And the Yashamnu is about the things that we've done wrong in the past year that we want to improve upon. But oftentimes we do this melody, most congregations do the Ashamnu. Yep, then you know it. Everybody knows it. You can walk down the street and you can say Ashamnu, and most people passing by would respond with that. Exactly. They know what they're doing, especially here in New York. But it's done in a major key, which is kind of joyous. And people have often asked, why is it sound so joyous? Why is it in a major key? Why wouldn't we go Ashamnu? You know, something more sad. But the reality is it's about overcoming the things that you've done in the past year. And they took this melody, they believe that it's derived from the Song of the Sea, the Shirat Hayam, what they call Akdamut. It's a melody that it's about overcoming, and it's actually joyous. So if you come to high holidays at Stephen Wise, you're going to get a very joyous experience, even when you're singing the Ashamnu. And here's a different setting that I would like to share with you. It's from like the 1970s. You'll hear a folk rock groove to it, and this is by Davidson. So cue the tape, please.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu tavo lefanecha tefilatenu ve'atit alam tefilatenu she'en anachnu Sefanim ukesheoref Loma lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avoteinu Tzadikim אנחנו ולא חטאנו. אבל אנחנו חטאנו. Ashanu, baganu, gazanu, dibanu dofi. Evinu, vehirshanu, zanu, Hamasnu tafalnu shaket. Yatznu ra zaizavnu, yatznu maranu, niyatznu saranu, avinu Pashanu, saranu, kishanu oref. נשמנו, בגדנו, גזלנו, דיברנו דופי, ראשנו, שיחקנו, תיעבנו, תגינו, תיתנו.
Everybody give a hand to Afro-Semitic Experience, please.
So I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about God. We're talking during this time in Selcihot, we begin process of teshuvah, of turning back towards God. And I wanted to think a little bit with you about what some of the greatest thinkers in Judaism, just a couple of them we'll bring up because there are many, have had to say about God that might help our own personal understandings as we spend so much time meditating on, our spirituality during this time. We just heard, a couple songs back, Avinu Malkeinu. And in that, if we look at the names that we give to God, it really uncovers what our relationship to God is and how we're thinking of God and how we understand God. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, is the direct translation, our parent, our sovereign. We'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. But first I want to go way back. If we look at the beginning of the Torah, if we look at Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning, God created, right? We would look at just that beginning of Torah and we would say God is, if we were naming God one thing, we would name God Creator, right? Creator. And in fact, if we think about, again, our relationship to God and we think about how we understand God, Creator is a very big part of that. And I'd like to look at one particular Jewish thinker on God as Creator because I think what he has to say is quite beautiful. And maybe you'll resonate with some of it. And that is a person called Sadia Gaon. He was part of the Gaonites in Babylonia, and he lived from 882 to 942. And a little about him before I tell you his views on God. He lived in Babylonia at a time that was pretty good for the Jews. It was a time when there was a center of intellectual study, and Jewish people had access to the philosophies of Plato, Aristotle. All of these were even translated into Arabic. And so Jewish leaders such as Sadia were able to read them, understand philosophy, and then you can see how this influenced their thinking. For example, Aristotle said that in order to gain understanding, you had to explore things with your senses. That was your entry into understanding the world. Like by seeing, smelling, tasting, feeling, we interacted and gained information, really like lived experience of things in the world. And in gaining that experience, we learn about who created all those things. So as we learn through our feelings and touching something, smelling it, we gain kind of an insight into it, and ultimately we gain kind of an insight into God, who created all these things. Sadia believed that everything had a cause and an effect, and that all finite things, that is, all things that live and die, right, were created by something infinite. And it follows then that that the heaven and the earth are finite, and something had to cause them to exist, and that, of course, is God. God is infinite, responsible for all creation. To Sadia, God created the world out of nothing. And by examining, again, God's creation, we could understand God. And Sadia sort of put it like in a modern way of thinking about it. It's like you can see God's footprint, so to speak, all around us. You know, if you think about living things, they all start with cells and multiply and gather new attributes until we have the form of a tree or a bird or a person. Like, it's pretty amazing. And at the center of all of God's created work is the world and human beings. Because Sadia believed that God created everything for us, that we are God's masterpiece, and that we have a way of giving thanks to God for creating this amazing world really for us. And that is through observing a mitzvot. So why is that? Why is observing mitzvot so important in a way to give thanks to God? Well, the mitzvot guide us and give us a way of being and interacting with God's creations, right? They give us a way of taking care of ourselves, a way of interacting with other human beings, a way of interacting with animals, a way of interacting with the environment, and so on and so forth. And so what a better way is there to thank God than to know how to treat God's creation? So that's Sadia Gaon. Somebody else I want to speak to you a little bit about is Judah Halevi. And Judah Halevi, like Sadia, looked to a piece of Torah to teach about who is God. And this piece of Torah, and the reason why I chose him is because he looks to the very important event, the foundational event. If we talk about the two most foundational events in the Torah, you would say creation and somebody call out. Oh, I guess we shouldn't call out. I just realized that. Scratch that. And Exodus from Egypt. If you were thinking that, give me a hands up. Yes, very good. 10 out of 10. So Judah Halevi looked at Exodus from Egypt as giving us a learning about God, that God is Redeemer. That God is the person who not only redeems, but acts in history. That this is a moment when God saw suffering and came right in and helped. And that there were many witnesses to this because of all of the people that it affected. And that is proof that God acts in history. So that's an interesting one for us to debate in one of our adult ed classes. That's a little plug. I'll hope you'll join me to talk about, does God act in history? But Judah Halevi says absolutely yes, and God is Redeemer. So we have God as Creator, God as Redeemer. And then we look at what our liturgy is saying over the High Holy Days. Over the High Holy Days, we just learned that we're describing God as Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our Sovereign. These two images are really polar opposites, right? We have a Father who is going to be, as Rabbi Hirsch was speaking about, probably someone who's going to land on the side of mercy more than judgment when we come before that person. And then we have our Sovereign. Sovereign's going to be much more on the judgment side of things, right? And who we are in relationship to that God is very different. Are we God's child, or are we God's subject over which God is ruling, right? Very, very different. And somewhere in the mix is where we find ourselves during the High Holy Days. On the one hand, if we had only mercy, right, there would be no responsibility really, like no checks and balances in the world. But if we had only judgment, that would be a problem for all of us, because we all make mistakes. It's just part of being human. In fact, the fact that we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur kind of proves that it was expected that we would make mistakes, we would transgress, because this is a mechanism built into our Jewish year in order for us to rectify and to ask for forgiveness and to start again. So when we look at Avinu Malkeinu, when we think about Avinu Malkeinu over these high and holy days, we think about the balance between those two things, and we internalize it. So we think about the times that we are deserving of mercy and that we need to forgive ourselves, be merciful towards ourselves. And we also think of the other side as well, when we need to be a little more, to have a little more deen, a little more judgment, and push ourselves to act in ways that we know we can. We know that we're capable of being just that bit better. We hold these two things. In a moment, we're going to hear the Afro-Semitic experience and cantor, singer, and Joe, who we're so happy to have with us today, sing Adonai, Adonai El Rachum, which is, we're going to hear all kinds of names for God in there. God, and the first one is God of mercy, right? Rachamim. And usually we think about this, this little segment as just saying the attributes of God, that God is merciful and God is kind and God is compassionate. But the part that is not in our liturgy, that actually is in the text from the Torah, is that it ends with that God forgives iniquities, forgives our sins, and pardons us, but visits those sins upon the third and fourth generation after us, upon our children, the next generations. So that's very jarring, and you might think, why does it say that? That sounds like punishing somebody who didn't have any, who didn't do the crime, right? And I like actually looking at this text very much when we're thinking about our relationship to God. Because actually, this text to me is about free will and about God having created us and have given us the greatest gift, which is to live in God's creation and to have free will. So it's our responsibility to treat God's world kindly and with respect and with love and with kindness and with all the things we ask from God to us. Because when we don't, you can sure bet that does visit the next generations. One just has to think about the environment and the impact on our kids and on our grandkids to think about how that works. So, Shana Tova to everybody. May it be a happy and a healthy, and we continue with Adonai, Adonai, an Afro-Semitic experience.
Thank you, Rabbi, for talking about God. Adonai, Adonai. Okay, I'm almost ready. So this song normally has, I'm starting off with the spicy part, okay? I'm starting off with the best part, the spicy part, okay? But normally there's a longer introduction to this. But you can just sing these words, the attributes of God as being forgiving. That's all you need to know is no se'avon v'pesha.
No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha v'chata v'nakeh. Erech ha'poim v'rov chesed v'amet. No cerveza la vim, no se'avon v'pesha. Adonai, Adonai, rachum v'chanon, erech ha'poim v'rov chesed v'amet. No cerveza la vim, no se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha. No se'avon v'pesha.
Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, normally it starts off with Adonai, Adonai, Rachum v'chanun, v'herech apayim v'rov chesed v'hemet, notzer chesed l'alafim, notzer yavon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh, notzer yavon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh. So that's the chazanut that they combine with the Afro-Semitic sound, and they create this whole incredible piece. It all builds up from that. So if we had more time, I'd give it all to you, but unfortunately, you're going to just have to get a taste, and the spiciest part. So this next, the last piece that we will be featuring is the Hasidic Kaddish, which is what you're all looking forward to, speaking of tastes. It's one of the last prayers that we sing before we get to the grand finale, which is the breaking of the fast at Yom Kippur. So right before the end of Ne'ilah, we sing this Hasidic Kaddish, which is, we sing at a pretty fast tempo, but we never sing it quite like this, with this beat, with this style, and this is it's a cool way to finish up the high holidays. And Joe, if you want to join me on some of the responses, you can just, you know it, so just riff with me here. So this is the Hasidic Kaddish, and this was made famous by a famous cantor, a famous chazan, by the name of Yosel Rosenblatt. And he was the one who made this Hasidic Kaddish so famous. And now, with their own twist and their own beat, Afro-Semitic experience.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה ועלמא דברה חירותה וימליך מלכותה בחיי כל וביום אתמול ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגאלה ובזמן קריב והימרו אמן אמן.
You can dance at home. Everybody, or in here too. You can all get up and dance if you want. Just stay in your seat.
ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ריקוד להילה ולהילה גבוה ואתה ונחמת אדם ירק בעלמא תושבחתה ונחמתה גם ירק בעלמא ואמרו אמן אמן יתקבל צלמות ובאו תהון לכל בית ישראל אותם מנוחות יבשמיה אמרו אמן אמן והשלמה רבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו עלינו ירגול ישראל ימרו אמן אמן
Bissell Klezma, Ukrainian Dorian,
עושה שלום עם רומא ויעשה שלום עלינו עלינו יעל כל ישראל והימרו אמן
Okay, and that's the end of the program. We are going to transition now with some soft music as we go into our actual service, so stay tuned as we break out some music for the service.
This has been a very difficult year for so many people. We did nothing to cause this pandemic. We could not have prevented it. Still, one of the features of this year is that our pre-existing weaknesses have been exposed. We see more clearly now that economic and health insecurity are disproportionate. Now, while it is true that all of us are in this together, some are more in it than others. And from that perspective, there's reason for all of us to repent. Selcihot is the beginning of the season of repentance. Judaism is unique in our understanding of the new year. We do not engage in revelry, except revelry for God. We do not engage in celebration, except celebration of life itself. We do not become intoxicated, except the intoxication of finding deeper meaning and greater purpose in life. We examine ourselves and we examine our deeds. We realize that we're not perfect. No one is perfect. Perfection is not the standard of Judaism. We aspire to fulfillment. We aspire to repair. All of us will fail. All of us will disappoint. All of us will fall short. All of us will break promises. Promises that we intended to keep when we articulated them. We know this from the start. And therefore, what we try to do is get a little bit better this year. A little more patient, a little more loving, a little more tolerant of ourselves and of our loved ones. We want to be a little stronger this year. We look to find greater perspective this year. We know that we're flawed vessels, and yet we also know that we're holy vessels. Nonetheless, despite our inherent flaws, that we are entrusted by God to carry inside of us the image of the Almighty One. And therefore, at this time of year, we focus on repair. We can repair ourselves by examining our misdeeds. We can repair our community. We can repair our world. One of the last things that Moses did upon completion of the desert tabernacle is to place the 2 tablets of stone inside the ark. We read in the Bible that there was nothing inside the ark but the 2 tablets of stone. And yet there's a fascinating passage in the Talmud that asserts that there actually was something else inside the ark. Rabbi Joseph said that both sets of tablets were there, both the new tablets, as well as the shards, the shattered pieces of the original set of tablets that Moses shattered when he came down the mountain and saw the Israelites dancing around the golden calf. Very few people think about what actually happened to those fragments that Moses shattered. Where did the pieces go? And were they less holy because they were shattered? Didn't they, too, bear the imprint of the Word of God? Rabbi Joseph felt that the shattered tablets also contained holiness. And just because they were shattered did not mean that they lost their holiness. That is the reason, he argues, that Moses put the broken pieces of the first set of tablets in the Ark of the Covenant as well. And from this, Rabbi Joseph teaches a profound lesson. From Moses' example, he writes, we learn that we are forbidden to be disrespectful to those who have been broken down by life. At one time or another, all of us will be unhappy, unhealthy, unsatisfied, and unfulfilled. We have or will have health problems, family problems, financial problems, and work problems. Some of us are lonely. Some of us are angry. Some of us are simply getting older and are dealing with issues we never had to deal with before. What Rabbi Joseph was emphasizing is that our brokenness, too, is part of the sanctity of life. The broken pieces of our lives intermingle with the repaired one, just as the broken tablets lay with the whole ones. In the holiest place on earth, inside the Ark of the Covenant. Some of the pieces of our lives can be repaired. Other pieces cannot be repaired. But they too are part of our lives. And they lay side by side with the completed tablets of our lives. Life is an extraordinary gift, and its very fragility, its susceptibility to brokenness, and its finality are what give life intensity and ultimately meaning to the human condition. Do not squander this gift of life on trivialities. Do not get distracted from the main task of your lives. Use these high holy days for repair. May we find deeper wisdom, self-understanding, and self-forgiveness. May we have a good year this year, a year of health and happiness, of understanding and meaning, a year of improvement and repair. Shana Tova Tikatevu. May we be inscribed this year in the book of life. It is our custom at this time of year to change the Torah covers we use throughout the year with those we use only on the high holy days. Now, given the limitations of personal interaction this year, I will do this symbolically on your behalf, and in addition, beforehand, we have asked members of our congregation who would normally be here to participate in this honor to do so virtually as we project them on screen. So first, we'll bring them in to our community here, and then after they're done, I will ask you to rise as I change the Torah cover on behalf of all of us.
We stand before
the tree of life,
our comfort, our challenge,
our call to holiness.
A moment of pure solidarity with our people's hopes and history.
Source of our strength.
an invitation to affirm or dissent,
to challenge or believe.
Let the reading of Torah be like prayer.
A meditation to remind us of what we strive for.
A chant that binds us to the chain of generations.
May our reading of Torah be like prayer.
Flowing like waters that renew the spirit.
Refreshing and sweet to nourish the soul.
A meditation to remind us what we strive for.
Let the reading of Torah be like prayer.
We stand before the tree of life.
Our Torah, ancient yet ever renewed.
This message is for all people.
Its words speak to all generations.
Truths endure and give hope.
Like those who came before us.
Every word a blessing, every verse a conversation with God.
Let the reading of Torah be like prayer.
In reverence and gratitude,
we stand, all of us this day, before the tree of life.
A chant that binds us to the chain of generations.
Please rise.
We continue our service with Kiano Amecha. Page 117.
כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו קהלך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צאנך ואתה רוענו, אנו עמך ואתה נותרנו, אנו פעולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דורנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו ממירך ואתה ממירנו, יא אליי, יא לה 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 לה, יא אליי, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 לה, יא אליי, יא לה 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 לה.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we are your people and you are our God. We are your children and you are our father, our mother. We are the people who serve you and you call us to serve. We are your community and you are our portion. We are your legacy and you are our purpose. We are your flock and you are our shepherd. We are your vineyard and you watch over us. We are your work and you are our maker. We are your beloved and you are our lover. We are your treasure and you are the one we cherish. We are your people. You reign over us. We offer you our words and you offer us yours. So forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. We continue on page 120 with Adonai, Adonai.
Adonai, Adonai, Yerachum v'cha
We continue on page 126, Adon HaSlichot.
Adon HaSlichot, Bomen Evadon, Ole Amukot, Dovet Tzedakot, Chatanu lefanecha, Rachem aleinu, Chatanu lefanecha, Rachem aleinu, Adur beniflamot, Vatik benechamot, Zocher berit avot, Choker kelayot, Chatanu lefanecha, Rachem aleinu, Chatanu lefanecha, Rachem aleinu, Tov umetiv labriot, Yodea kol nistarot, Kovesh avonot, Kovesh tzedakot, Chatanu lefanecha, Rachem aleinu, Chatanu lefanecha, Rachem aleinu.
We are taught days are scrolls, write on them only what you want remembered. But we remember our weakness, and our days bear the mark of all that went wrong. On this night, we have hope in the one who sustains us as we share our transgressions. We continue with the confessional on page 128.
Tavo lefanecha.
On page 127.
Eloheinu Eloi avotenu v'imotenu, Tavo lefanecha, Tefilateinu, Ve'ol titalam midchinateinu, she'en anachnu hazefanim ukesheoref lomar צדיקיים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו, אבינו
We continue with Ashamnu on page 128.
Ashamnu, Bakadnu, Gazalnu, Tafanu Shoker, Imarno Novi, Tafanu Shoker,
The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice.
מלכי שחטאנו לפניך,
The harm we have caused in your world deliberately and by mistake.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי ובסתר.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעין ובלא יודעין.
The harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בשנאת חינם.
The ways we have wronged you by hating without cause.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ברכילות.
The harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בצרות עין.
The ways we have wronged you through a selfish or petty spirit.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך במוץ הלב.
The harm we have caused in your world by hardening our hearts.
ועל כולם סליחות סלח לנו וחלנו כפרנו ועל כולם סליחות סלח לנו מחלנו סלח לנו מחלנו
For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. We continue with Shema Kolenu on page 134.
Shema Kolenu Adonai Eloheinu Us verochem וקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון את השיבנו אדוני אליך, השיבנו אליך ונשובה חודש ימינו, ימינו אל תשליכנו
Adonai, Adonai, page 136.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim V'Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed L'Arafim, Nose Avon V'Chesha, V'Chata V'Nakeh. Adonai. Adonai, Adonai, Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Chesed v'Emet, Noter Chesed l'Arafim, Nose Avon v'Chesha, V'Chata v'Nakeh.
Forgive us, Avinu, we have sinned. Pardon us, Malkeinu, we have transgressed. For you are the one who pardons and forgives. We continue with the Avinu Malkeinu on page 140, and we rise.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kal Tevel, בחרב ורב מעלינו אבינו מלכנו כלה כל צר ומספיק מעלינו אבינו מלכנו אבינו מלכנו כלנו בספר חיים טובים אבינו מלכנו חודש עלינו חודש עלינו שנה טובה אבינו מלכנו אבינו מלכנו חדש עלינו שנה טובה אבינו מלכנו שמע קולנו שמע קולנו שמע אבינו מלכנו חוננו עלינו אבינו מלכנו חוננו עלינו כי אין בנו מעשים עשה עמנו עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו אבינו מלכנו אבינו מלכנו חוננו בנינו חוננו בנינו אבינו מלכנו חוננו בנינו כי אין בנו מעשים.
And we continue with the shofar. Tekiah. Tekiah. Tekiah Gedolah. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
אחת שאלתי את אדוני אותה אבקש אחת שאלתי את אדוני אותה אבקש נשיא בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקש בהיכלו לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו.
We'll exit in an orderly manner. If you want to file out from the back towards the front. Shana Tova and Shavua Tov.
Shana Tova.